Fall Guys is coming to mobile very soon. Recently saw what the game will look like, when it will be released and even the specs required to know if your phone will be able to play it. Spoiler alert, it probably will be. Let's not waste any more time and start with the question you probably all have. How will I be able to play Fall Guys on my phone? Well, from what it looks like, you'll be able to download it within the Epic Games Store app. Now I know what a lot of you are thinking, but isn't the Epic Games Store not on iOS? And the answer to that is yes, for now. Epic Games themselves stated a few days ago that the Epic Games Store and Fortnite for iOS are already completed and ready to be released, and they're only waiting for Apple to approve them. So if it actually turns out that you'll only be able to get it through Epic's store, you don't need to worry as it will be available for everyone very soon. Also, Epic isn't stupid. They know that if they want this game to succeed, they will obviously have to release it on both OSs, so that won't be a problem. Lastly, we can see in the leaked screenshots that the publisher's name is not Epic Games, so it might even be possible that they'll be able to release the game on stores like the Play Store and the App Store as well, similar to how Rocket League Sideswipe is under the Psyonix name and is on both the Epic Store and the App Stores. Speaking of the screenshots, let's take a closer look at them because they reveal what the game itself will look like. In the first screenshot, we can see Fall Guys being one of the games listed in the Epic Store. But wait, what is that image? We've never seen it before. Well, this is the new Keyart for Fall Guys after it launches on mobile. Basically the image you see in the loading screens and all that stuff. Up until now we had this image, but now we'll have this image. I honestly like it more. It feels more alive in a way and has stuff that were recently added like power-ups. Also, you probably noticed the Fall Guys logo at the bottom right, and that's gonna be the icon for the game on phones, which you can see more clearly here. Overall, it is a Keyart that is pretty welcoming for new players and shows a lot of what the game offers, and it might even be a teaser for what's to come in creative like that flipper and water balloons which we don't have yet, similar to how the old image showed hexatiles before they were added. In the next screenshot, we can see the details about Fall Guys and there's some interesting things here. Obviously the game is free and I don't think it's worth talking about that, but what we can definitely talk about are these in-game screenshots. That's right, that is what the game will look like on phones. But before we talk about that, these screenshots most likely reveal some upcoming unvaults as well, since Wall Guys and Puzzle Path are vaulted but they do appear here, and it's pretty safe to say that these were recently taken screenshots, since we can see some of the brand new controls we got in the Fall Forever update, which we'll talk about now. So here's how the game will look like on phones. Surprisingly, the graphics don't look that bad at all, especially the slime on Hexaring looks very vibrant and detailed, and it's definitely better than the Switch and PS4 graphic, where it's just a flat pink floor, so that's very nice. Now let's take a closer look at the controls. On the left side we obviously have our joystick which will allow us to move, and since there's not a second joystick, we know that to move your camera you'll just need to drag your finger across the screen anywhere. On the right side at the bottom we have our grab button. Nothing really to say about that, however what we can say something about is the jump button above it. You might notice that while we have a jump button, we don't have a dive button, and that will actually be a setting that you'll be able to switch at any time. You can either choose to tap your jump button twice to dive, similar to how Stumble Guys diving works, or you can choose to have two different buttons for jumping and diving, which will allow you to dive without needing to jump first. Personally, I think that while a double tap sounds easier, you'll be missing out on the ability to only dive, so I recommend switching it to the two buttons, but the choice is up to you. Anyways, above that we have the piggybacking button, which is the button you use to request, well, a piggyback. And above that we have the chat and emote wheel buttons, which you use to communicate with other people. Personally, I can't wait to see all the mobile players using emoticons and phrases all the time like we did when they first came out. Lastly, we can see in the top right corner the qualified and eliminated banners, and they honestly look a bit weird. The text is a lot smaller than the numbers themselves. I mean, it's not a game breaking thing obviously, you never really have to read the text anyways, but my OCD can't just leave it there without mentioning it in the video. And that's it for the controls. Also, it's worth mentioning that like most mobile games, you will be able to choose where you want to place each individual button on the screen, so it's not just a set placement, you will have full control over it, and also you'll most likely be able to connect a wired or wireless controller as well if you don't want to use the touch controls. Now let's go back to that screenshot for a bit. You might have seen this tab that says specifications, and that's how powerful your phone has to be in order to play Fall Guys. Unfortunately, we didn't get a leaked screenshot for that, but we did get some information from the leaker himself that mostly apply to Android phones, but some info might still be relevant to iPhones. In order for your phone to be able to play Fall Guys, you'll need to have first 3GB of RAM, second 2GB of storage, and third a minimum of Android 7 or later. As you can see, the requirements are not high at all, and even if you have a 6-year-old phone, I'm still pretty confident in its ability to run the game. Obviously the frame rates will vary from phone to phone, and if your phone can barely download the game, then you might encounter some lag while playing. Unfortunately, we don't have the information about the processor that's required, which is arguably the most important part of the specs, and might even be a deal breaker for some phones, but seeing the specs that we do have, I don't think you need to worry about it. I think it will be able to run on 90% of phones, if not more. And the last thing I want to say about the specs is that whilst 2GB of storage is the minimum required, it's the minimum required to download the game. That does not mean that the updates will not require even more storage to install, so my suggestion is to have at least 5GB available for Fall Guys to be covered for the future updates that might arrive. Last but not least, the question you probably all have in your mind: when will Fall Guys Mobile actually be released? This is probably the only part of the video where I'm not 100% sure about, but me and a lot of other people are pretty confident on two dates, July 23rd and July 24th, and there are a couple of reasons for that. First of all, Epic's break already started and it ends on July 15th. Obviously they won't release it until then, so those dates are out of the picture. Also, the next major Fall Guys update is on July 23rd as well, which might mean that it will be the same day that the Fall Guys X Fortnite collab will happen. I mean, it makes perfect sense. Promoting the mobile release through Fortnite is an automatic way to get a hell of a lot of people trying it out. And lastly, and probably the most obvious but most important piece of information, is the Fame Pass. The Fame Pass runs until July 23rd, and it's pretty obvious that they want to launch mobile with a brand new Fame Pass. As you can see, pretty much all evidence we have points to July 23rd or 24th being the official mobile release date, and it would be pretty weird if it doesn't release on one of those dates. So what do you think about all this? Are you excited for Fall Guys Mobile? Do you think it will potentially kill Stumble Guys? Tell me in the comments below. It was a lot of information and I tried to compile it into one video as fast as possible, so if you want to support me, just like and subscribe. And also I recently enabled channel membership, so if you want to support me that way too, feel free to. I won't really mention it in other videos, but since I've not talked about it in any videos, I might as well. Anyways, I'll see you in the next video.